Next speaker is Roland Chauville, who will be speaking on the Universal Periodic Review process.
Thank you, Iain, for the introduction, and thank you to Amnesty International for organizing this event. I'll be talking about something that happens in Geneva called the UPR, and which concerned Ireland last year. Sorry, and will be concerning Ireland over the next few years. The UPR process, maybe as a reminder, is a mechanism that takes place in Geneva, but it's a continuing process, starting in country, going through Geneva and going back to countries. It reviews the human rights situation of all UN member states every 4 or 5 years. And from 2008 to 2011, all countries have been reviewed. And now, as of 2012, we are starting to re-review countries. My organization, UPR Info, is independent from the United Nations, and we work to promote this mechanism. So Ireland was reviewed for the first time in this mechanism, the Universal Periodic Review, last year, the 6th of October. It received 127 recommendations from 46 states, because states are making recommendations to other countries to improve their human rights situation. And out of those 127 recommendations, 91 were accepted fully, 17 were accepted in part, partially, and 19 were rejected. So Ireland will have the obligation to implement those recommendations that it had accepted until the next review will take place in 2016. So NGOs in their engagement in the UPR process can work with the government and other actors, which I will present after, to ensure that those recommendations are implemented until the next review. In Ireland, there's been a strong coalition of NGOs preparing for the review of Ireland last year, established by the Irish Council for Civil Liberties. We have someone from the organization here. And they managed to really engage civil society in the country. The coalition originally was 17 NGOs, but then many more joined, I think. And they submitted a report. They organized roundtables around the country. So really managed to raise awareness about this issue. And this is very encouraging for the following. So going into the presentation, and I apologize for some people that heard that presentation yesterday to a different meeting. It's going to be very, very similar. So I apologize if you get bored and cannot avoid falling asleep. I will understand at this time of the day. So first, why NGOs should engage in the implementation? Because we said the states has a prime responsibility to implement the recommendations it received. So Ireland will have, the government will have to implement those 108 recommendations it accepted fully or partially. But civil society should also get engaged for several reasons. One, because the UN says so. And if NGOs are given the opportunity by a resolution of the United Nations, then they should make sure they enjoy that. It's not always very often that the UN says NGOs should engage, that the UN recognizes the role of NGOs, and they do around the UPR. There's no independent mechanism to assess the implementation of recommendations in countries. So when Ireland will be up for review again in 2016, there will be the assessment of the implementation of the recommendations will be left to Ireland or to every state working on their at their own level to find out whether recommendations have been implemented or not. And then it will be states that made recommendations in 2008 and will be willing to know what happened to those recommendations. They will be interested in knowing, having ground information from the ground, and NGOs in that respect will have a very good information about it. And then the UPR offers some values as an international mechanism. One of them being the sustainability and the predictability of the mechanism. We already know the next time Ireland will be reviewed will be in May 2016, so you can already start to prepare for it. And we already know that at midterm in 2 years, now in 1 year, Ireland will be presenting a report on its midterm progress. So you have predictability, and you can plan your activities already around it. And there's other mechanisms at the United Nations, such as the special rapporteurs and treaty bodies, but there's no treaty body review until next 2014, on the CCPR. So for ESCR rights, then the UPR is a stronger opportunity. Now, potential partners, NGOs should be working with the government, obviously, working with the Commission, with the parliamentarians. This is quite important because parliamentarians will be the ones implementing or putting in law the changes recommended by other states. Embassies of countries that made recommendations, and this is quite important. We've had several countries that made recommendations on different rights. On the right to health, we had Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, and Portugal. Those are European countries that you can lobby here in Dublin to make sure that they follow up with the recommendations they made, and when they have their dialogue with Ireland, they can mention those issues. UN presence and the media to raise awareness about the UPR, because the review in Geneva is a unique opportunity to raise awareness because Ireland gets reviewed by states at the UN. It's easy to feed the newspapers with it, but after that, the momentum has a tendency to disappear. So it's important to keep the media interested in the UPR process. There's 3 ways to engage in the UPR as an NGO: to raise awareness about it, to plan and monitor the implementation, and to report about this implementation to the UN. So first, raising awareness. There's different ways of raising awareness. First, NGOs can diffuse the recommendations that Ireland received, and this coalition of NGOs, Your Rights Right Now, had put up a website with information about the UPR process, and this is used for information about the follow-up as well. So this is a good place where you can diffuse information, make the recommendations known. In the media as well, having open ads about the UPR, having publication of recommendations. Also having billboards in the Middle East. They had billboards with the recommendations accepted by governments in each country to raise awareness about those recommendations, to make them more accessible. Another way is to make the recommendations understandable to the general public, so in plain English, but also to translate them in the local language, in Gaelic, in order to make them more accessible to the different people that could be interested in that issue. And a third way is to give those recommendations a second life, to use them with other mechanisms. This week, there's the special rapporteur on human rights defenders in Dublin. There will be the CCPR review of Ireland, so on civil and political rights, next year. So that's an opportunity for in 2014. That's an opportunity again for NGOs to ask why Ireland rejected some recommendations, because it rejected 19 recommendations. So treaty bodies, special rapporteurs can ask Ireland why they rejected those, if they're in compliance with their obligations, and so on and so on. This is a way to put pressure on the government to make sure that even though they rejected recommendations, then they explain why. And if the reasons are not valid, then to challenge that and to make sure that Ireland goes back to its decision. Planning and monitoring. NGOs are not responsible again for implementing recommendations, but they're strongly advised to help the government, which will need them to implement recommendations and to make sure that the implementation is according to the needs of the people, and not only to pass a law or to create a commission that will never meet or never do anything useful for the people. So in planning, they can help the government planning the implementation. There's only 4 years now, there's only 3 left. For 3.5 for the government, so time is running very fast, and planning is the best way to ensure that the recommendations will be implemented. NGOs can develop charters or metrics that will lay down who's responsible of implementing what, which ministries, because ministries are not necessarily, they don't necessarily feel very concerned about the UPR process. They contributed to the review last year, but then they tend to forget about it. And it's the matrix is a good way to say this ministry is responsible to implement this and this and this, and the parliament, what laws need to be done, what the responsibility of the parliament in the UPR, and so on and so on. So really laying down the different steps that will be able to bring implementation. And here is an example of Kenyan NGOs. So coalition in Kenya came together and developed this document that really explains the expectations taken from the recommendations, the indicators of success, the specific action, which ministry was responsible, which NGOs will follow up the work of the ministry, and the timeline as well. So this is quite practical, very action-oriented, again, organized by civil society in Kenya. And then now you have plan, and you can also engage in monitoring, so checking if the government is actually delivering, because it's difficult to have access to information on what the government is actually doing or not. How is it organized? Is it organized or not? And what's the plan of the government to implement the recommendations? So the government is supposed to hold public consultation with civil society. There was a recommendations by Austria on this issue that Ireland should have consultation with its civil society, and Ireland accepted this recommendation. So this is an opportunity to grasp, to ensure that Ireland does consult with civil society. And also, in certain countries, they have established a steering committee composed of the different ministries, composed of the Commission and NGOs and UN agencies, and they meet once or twice per year to discuss advancement of and progress in implementing recommendations. So that's also a good practice. As putting, it's establishing mechanisms that will push the government and everyone at the ministries to work on implementation, and not only having one or two people interested in the issue, but having mechanisms to push the government is an effective way of getting things done. And now reporting, it's half of the job really. I mean, getting engaged in saying what the government has been doing or not is important, but also telling the international community what has not been done. This is also important. And to this, there's the midterm review it's not a review, but it's Ireland, which voluntarily offered to come back 2 years after the review and to present a report on its implementation. So that will take place in September next year, and then NGOs can come to Geneva and also present their view on the implementation. And that could be interesting to create a dialogue and to make sure that the voice of the civil society is also heard. So you can also make a statement, have a side event at the UN to really, again, raise awareness around this. And also, if the government is ready to come to Geneva, I'm sure they will be ready to have a meeting in Dublin to discuss that. So the debate could also take place in Dublin and not necessarily only in Geneva. So having a press conference in Dublin with the government to talk about implementation at midterm. We ourselves, UPR Info, have a program that looks into implementation at midterm. So we contact civil society after 2 years to ask for information, and then we compile it into a document. And we'll be looking into next year into Ireland. So we'll be contacting civil society and the government and the National Commission, and putting all this information into a report that we then publish and send to recommending states. So states that made recommendations will have an overview of what has been implemented or not after 2 years, and they're very interested in having that. And then they can use that for the next review in 2016. And then the second review of Ireland, which, as I said, will take place in May 2016. And we already have the deadline for when NGO will have to submit a report, which will be on 29 September 2015. So this sounds pretty far, but it will be coming fast. And if NGOs want to get organized and to maintain the same level of engagement as during the first cycle, which was really high, then that means consultation around the country and so on and so on. So that's important to start to get organized now already. So I'll leave it here, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.